Today's best music.
Magic 89.9.
All right, good afternoon, Philippines. Thank you very much for checking us out again today. It is Tuesday. My name is Boom Gonzalez, and every week we come in and enter the chat room. Last week we had a live drive performance with Clara Benin. That was, I think, the third or fourth live drive performance that we've had. But prior to that, we've had discussions about photography. We've had some interesting people on the show, like, of course, our Department of Tourism Secretary, Berna Romulo Puyat, was also on the show. Vicky Webb was also on the show to talk about the news industry and just her profile. And we've had a lot of great guests. Erwan Husaf was also on the show. But this episode today is going to be very important and very special to me, close to my heart. And I think it will resonate with a lot of people. And I know for a fact that a lot of people will be able to relate with this topic that we posted yesterday on our Magic 89.9 Instagram. We're talking about mental health. We're going to be talking about sports and mental health and just mental health in general. And a lot of our friends, families have some sort of connection to anybody who is experiencing or suffering from some sort of mental illness. And we're here to talk about it right now. Again, my name is Boom, and we have some guests. We have a couple of guests who are joining us from the U.S. today, and we want to thank them for taking time out. And obviously they're in a different time zone, so they're really taking time out for this special edition of the chat room. Our first guest is the team physical therapist and wellness lead of the New York Knicks. He also heads their mindfulness program. He teaches meditation, mindfulness, and breath work, my favorite, yoga, intention setting, and overall well-being. A friend of mine from a long time ago, Mr. Erwin Valencia, is with us all the way from New York, joining us at an ungodly hour. Hey, Erwin, thank you very much for joining us. That's E. We'll call him E for the purpose of this show. All right. Also, another guest of ours joining us from San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. Been my partner for maybe a little over 16 years in the sportscasting industry. And he calls himself a survivor in terms of his own mental health problems, which he experienced a long, long time ago. And a couple of years ago, he came out in public in the obviously, he wants to help more people in terms of awareness, in terms of dealing about it, in terms of talking about it. So we call him a survivor. I call him my partner, mental health advocate, also right now the North American News Bureau Chief for ABS-CBN. TJ Manotoc is with us. Hey, TJ!
All right. What's up, Boom? Hey, E. Ang ganda ng mga reveal natin, ano?
para akong may producer. Well, first of all, I know, like I said, it's the hours. Are you in San Francisco? Am I correct, PJ?
Yes, sir.
Right. So, the hours are not favorable to both of you. So we really appreciate this time that you're taking for all of us and for all the listeners who are listening on radio or listening at home, if they're working from home right now, and watching us on Facebook Live, watching us on Twitch also, and watching us through the Kumu app, and also watching the replays or the post episodes on YouTube and listening on Spotify. You have no excuse. And as we said, we're going to be talking about mental health today, not necessarily just in sports, but that's also going to be something that we want to cover today. E, I want to start with you just so that we can introduce you to more people also. Can you tell us what do you exactly do aside from what I just said, and what it is that you are a staunch advocate of right now?
Well, first and foremost, Boom, Magic, thank you for having me. It's been very fascinating that you and I have grown from so many years for about almost 25 years that we've known each other, and our paths have kind of like gone in different directions. But in the end, I think good people will always find good people, especially in times of uncertainty and challenges. And I've always been grateful for you for keeping in touch and for letting me to know and keeping me abreast of what's going on back home. And I'm only home in the Philippines probably, once or twice a year max. And to be able to get an opportunity to at least be in touch with somebody who's at the ground level like yourself has been truly a blessing and an honor. So first of all and foremost,
You're welcome, buddy. And thank you.
And number two, TJ, I mean, thank you very much, man, for obviously being here, for being at the park and joining us and all, no holds barred, just being here.
Gotta find a way.
Finding the perfect light.
Exactly, finding a perfect light, and obviously more than anything else, being an advocate for mental health and sharing your own story with it. I think it takes courage, strength, and authenticity to be able to face up to the challenges you personally had, to be able to share that to the world. I think we all should learn from each other, and that's the only way the world will get better and evolve.
The key. Absolutely.
But anyway, so I know. So, well, I am a well-being expert and a gratitude evangelist. That's kind of like I had to brand myself in a sense. I think I've been blessed to have spent most of my life with a certain mindset and an outlook that I started learning about and growing into starting at the age of 12, actually. I think my world in the sense of being mentally fit and having a good mindset started with really martial arts and taekwondo at the age of like 12 years old. And to be able to now be aware of everything I've learned from martial arts, reading the Bushido and the Way of the Samurai and Shaolin stuff and Bruce Lee's Kung Fu stuff and understanding how people are both mentally and physically like fit was something I've always aspired, and having a respectful and integrity code is always something I've been fascinated by. Add to that, years of being a clinical, being a clinician, going through physiotherapy, sports medicine, osteopathic training, and then positive psychology, life coaching and all that other stuff. I then added these elements of like how to put things together, and then being part of a massive community and personal growth. One of my best friends is a guy named Jay Shetty, who, it has been viewed by 37 billion people around the world and spreads wisdom to make it go viral. So I think being somebody who comes from a holistic well-being side, both mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and then being able to then apply that in the world of not just sports, but also people who are high performers. And whether we're talking about startup entrepreneurs, whether we're talking about athletes, we're talking about CEOs, we're talking about musicians, artists, whether they're instrumentalists or even dancers. I think anyone who wants to perform at their highest level need to first understand who they are. And before they can affect and impact the world, they need to understand how they can impact themselves first. And so one of my passions in this world is to mentor and guide and advise those who want to find themselves at that next level. I think my colleagues in this mental health space who are psychiatrists and the psychologists, their jobs have been they're usually the people that like help people who are, let's say, -8 or -10 to try to get them to like a 0 or a +1. My role in this world that I've, been pretty much very clear in the past number of years, particularly, is to get those people who are 0 and +1 and make them a 10. And finding that through the years of experiences I've had, studying positive psychology, learning all the ancient scripts and wisdom, and surrounding myself with obviously guys like Jay, Tony Robbins, and a lot of other people who are in the personal growth space. So I know it's a lot of things and multiple different things, but if there was something that I really, I probably will define myself is really right now, after all the years of all the practices I've done, I don't like to call myself an expert or a guru by any means, and some people will call me that, but I am definitely a practitioner of well-being and an advocate of well-being. So.
And your work, one of the reasons why I also, I invited you was because you also work with athletes, and we're going to touch on that a lot today. And it's not only athletes, performers, sportscasters, people in media. And this is why TJ is here, obviously you came out publicly a couple of years ago, TJ, with your history, and you're one of the lucky ones because you consider yourself a survivor.
Yeah.
Tell me first, for those who don't know, okay, this is well documented already, but for those who don't know, why did it, in your mind, take longer than probably you wanted in terms of coming out, and what was the stimulus, the motivation for coming out? It was the why part because of the stigma that comes along with experiencing and suffering from any kind of form of mental illness, rather.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit of a story in terms of the why and the timing of it. I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. I was on a show on ANC called The Rundown with Sestrilon.
Right.
And it's basically a newscast, but
It is.
it's a newscast slash with an interview in the middle, like a lengthy interview. Like it was an hour show, but I think about a good 20-25 minutes of it is an actual interview. And when she's not there, they get another senior anchor to relieve her. I was just her chuwari-wari up, you know. I was the sports guy, the social media guy, the features anchor to do the other light stuff, right?
Right.
But on extreme circumstances, that's last minute, that she can't make it, I have to fill in.
Right.
And that night was one of those nights. She was stuck on EDSA. It was already like 8:25, and the show was at 9 o'clock. And the producers were like, Seth's not going to make it. We can't call in anybody in time to relieve her. You got to anchor the whole show. I'm like, okay. I was prepared for it. I've been briefed that this moment might happen. So I'm like, I'm cool. And then I'm like, who's the guest? So that I can prepare, you know, whatever it's going to be about. And usually it's a newsmaker, you know, people who are in controversies in the government or whatnot. But that evening, the guest was Jeannie Goldberg. And she was launching the Natasha Goldberg Foundation. And back then, it was the only foundation that dealt with suicide prevention. And the reason why it was called the Natasha Goldberg Foundation, because that was in honor of her daughter, Natasha, who took her own life many, many years ago. And I kid you not, the coincidence of that evening is so serendipitous. I knew, I call her Tita Jeannie. I know her because she's my mom's friend. So when the producer told me, okay, the guest is Jeannie Goldberg, the topic is depression and suicide prevention, and I'm like, I got this. You know, like, I got this, guys. No, nothing to worry about. And in the office, in the ANC production, at that point, nobody knew what my history was.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And, you know, I did tell them, you know, Tita Jeannie is actually a family friend, so I'm comfortable to chat with her, so no worries.
Right.
So here she comes, you know, and then she was briefed that Seth is not there, and then I'm going to interview her, so she's cool with that. I kid you not. 5 minutes into the interview, it becomes a conversation. Because I unwittingly just started talking about my experiences on national cable news television live. And I think that's the first. This is like, what 220, like 2013, 2014. It's actually still on YouTube. And it was just a conversation. And I was so just open about what I went through and what it was like and what took, you know, for me to get well and balanced and on the path of healing. After that show, the feedback was amazing because it was taboo, right? Boom, you don't usually talk about suicide, mental health, and that was the barrier that Jeannie was trying to break through in the first place. And then she revealed this to me many years after, actually. But she said that night, driving home from the interview, she cried in the car because she was so nervous that I would screw up the interview because I wasn't assessed the law. You know, I wasn't at that level. And she's like, who's this junior anchor who's going to handle the interview?
Right.
I mean, she knew me as the son of her friend, but
Yeah.
that doesn't give her any, you know, confidence that it would be a good interview, right?
Right.
But it went so well. The feedback was so good. It really opened a lot of doors of people just to start talking about it. She eventually invited me to talk in an event in a school they did in La Salle das Marinas a few weeks after that to talk about my story, which was the first time I spoke about it publicly and in length and in detail. And I did. And so many students went up to me and said, Kuya TJ, thank you for telling your story. That was so inspiring, so helpful. I'm like, wow, I never thought it would be that. You know, I mean, it's not that I wanted to hide it or anything. It's just I never thought that it would matter at all. I never thought that it would make any difference to anybody. But when it did, I'm like, wow, And I told Tita Jeannie after the event, you know what, Tita Jeannie, I think I have to write a book about my experiences. And I want to give the proceeds of that book to the NGF Foundation to help you guys out. And she goes, wonderful, thank you, hijo, blah, 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 blah. Put it in the back seat, in the back burner, a procrastinated project. Years down the line, it never came about. Not till I was about to turn 40. And that's why the timing, bud. 3 years ago, when I was going to hit 40, I'm like, I think it's about time. It was a nice round number, 40, you know. It was about time to talk about my experience. And I was going to do the book until I realized, it was in my house. It was in the afternoon. I was looking around me, and I see both of my kids. At the time, Mika and Inigo were 13 and 8 respectively. And they were watching YouTube on their phones. And I'm like, guys, you never watch TV anymore. I pay for cable every month, and no one's watching TV. And they're like, Dad, I can't choose what to watch. And then at the same time, I was starting to really be hooked to YouTube because of Casey Neistat. I'm sure Erwin knows Casey, you know, this incredible YouTuber who's such a good vlogger. And I was so inspired with the way he tells stories in a really authentic way. And I'm like, ding, that's it. I have to do a video. I have to talk about it as a video and really, you know, like a confessional and whatnot. And actually, it was just really going to be like this, like me talking to the camera. Not until I spoke to my good friend, Jake De Guzman, who was actually also my neighbor, producer, par excellence from Game Plan, the Pro Team, all that. And he said, dude, let's do more. Aside from you telling your story, let's do reenactments. Let's get some actors. I'm like, and he's like, it's going to cost a bit, but let's go for it. I'm like, sige na, let's, you know, it was my gift to the universe. 40 years old, pretty much. I mean,
to fund
I
it.
did have to spend. Yeah, I did have to fund it. You know, it wasn't cheap, but I'm like, I had to do this way. And the impact though was tremendous because it takes you on a ride, you know, to see the reenactment, to see the drama of what actually went through. Because it's one thing for me to say it, it's another thing for people to see it. So that was it. That's how it started, bud. And then when it came out, the response was overwhelming. Similar to that day in La Salle Dasmariñas 6 years ago when I gave a talk, so many people online were giving messages of thanks and just they're like, it lifted a weight on my shoulders. You're such an inspiration. You gave me hope. And that was my goal. 2 things. My goal was, 1, to make it a conversation about positivity. Because as a journalist, after that night on ANC that I talked about my journey in my depression, they made me the suicide reporter. And I'm like, it is what it is. I didn't like it, but because they knew I had mental health
background, history,
you know, background, that I could handle those stories well,
right?
You know, and interview the people in a good, compassionate way, and really, you know, do the story justice. But I was like, looking back, like I lost count how many times I've had to do a story on suicide, and I'm like, is this the only time that mental health will be discussed in media? When it's shock and awe. Oh my God, somebody died. Somebody jumped. Somebody shot himself. Is it? And I'm like, it can't be. You know why? Because, well, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'll bet you my right leg that suicide probably takes only less than 5% of the lives of those who have mental health issues. There's a vast majority of us who are okay. There are some who struggle badly. There's some who are all right. There's some who survive. And when you bring up the word survivor, bud, I want to give a short
Qualify
anecdote.
it, sure. Go ahead.
When the video was done, I showed it to a few people to get their inputs on it. One of the persons I showed it to was my former therapist who helped me through my journey in my teenage years. He actually hesitated, and another psychologist actually, 2 of them. They hesitated and said, can you not use the word survivor? Why?
Okay.
And they're like, because it might give people a false sense of hope. Because sabi nila, people like you, who never had an anxiety attack or a bout of depression since my 20s. Really, it never happened again.
Right.
They're like, there's such a small percentage of you. There's only like 5% of you.
Right.
I'm like, ganun ba? And all the more. All the more I want to give them hope.
To put more emphasis on it.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Those are the statistics because of maybe of what's available in terms of the modalities of therapy and helping them out.
Right.
But it's my story. It's authentic to who I am. So if I say I survived, I'm not lying to you. I survived. I've never had another bout of anxiety, depression. There's a whole long laundry list of things that I've done through the years in terms of mindset and all that. But that was it.
Yeah, and it gives That's the word there. It gives hope that to use
Yeah.
when I heard the word, because yeah, it's not usually and jump in on this. It's not usually associated with that. It's usually sufferer or patient or we don't hear the word survivor a lot, and I'm not saying that we should use it loosely, because in the case
Mhm.
of TJ, he did survive, and good for you, TJ. And a lot of people have not been able to get to that point yet. But in talking about the numbers, uh, I read that it's 25%. 25% of the population suffer from some sort of mental illness. And again, this is in across the board. Whether you're an athlete, you have been exposed to a lot of these athletes. You've worked with the Knicks for, was it 6 years now?
Yeah.
But it's not just the Knicks. You see the NBA in general. A lot of these athletes have already started to come out. DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Love. Just recently, Paul George talked about
Yeah.
right here in the bubble that they're experiencing right now. And it's that stigma, which when you talk about stigma, you always talk about disgrace, dishonor, diba? Yan yung mga words that are associated with that. What do you say to that number, 25%, and the low number of, as TJ said so far, of survivors?
I mean, from my own personal opinion, I think that's even low.
Mm.
I mean, what is the
Agreed. I would
quantifier of
agree.
that 25%? Is that because you've had an actual episode, then you had to
Diagnosis too.
see a therapist, you had to
Yeah.
actually do something, be confined, brought
Right.
to, you had to go to a psychiatrist. Is that what that defines? What if just going through anxiety and depression because of a bad breakup, that already constituted that? Do you consider that? Because if you did, then
Mhm.
we're talking even higher numbers,
Bigger
right?
number,
Higher
right.
percentage.
Correct.
There's a
Sure.
bigger number than that. And because even just merely just, let's say, for example, that conversation we're talking about, is being in a close quarters where you have no control of what's going on around you, and then not being able to see your family for 3 months, and then having these thoughts in your head, and in a different balance of what we call in positive psychology, we call it thinking traps. It's this blaming either ourselves, blaming somebody in front of us, blaming other people, having hopelessness, helplessness, and catastrophizing what the world is going through. I mean, if just by simply being that, then you can say, well, that's a mental illness situation, or can it be categorized? And I think that's where things kind of get muddy, because
Blurry, yeah, correct.
yeah, it gets blurry, because what is truly that definition? Because like even burnout isn't truly a mental illness,
Mm.
but it is it's an issue of mental health, but it's not categorized or labeled in a sense, if you look at the DSM, so to speak, as an actual illness itself. And so I think the first and foremost issue that's out there is, what are the definitions? And I think sometimes there's this weird definition of like, okay, you have mental health. Well, we all have mental health.
Correct, yeah.
Mhm.
Why you talk about mental illness?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
just like physical health, we all have physical health, but we can have physical illness.
Mhm.
So in understanding what that means, mental health and mental illness are two separate things. Mental illness is underneath mental health. We have mental illness and mental fitness, and there's the two sides, like physical fitness and physical illness. I think in understanding that, then you'll have a better idea of like what you're looking at and as you categorize.
Mhm.
But the challenge with you categorizing things is then, as you try to create these labels, then people latch on to these labels. I mean, there's a certain train of thought that has shown that if you continue to tell a person that they're depressed, you're depressed, you're depressed,
Yes,
you're
right.
Mhm.
weird enough, you will be depressed.
Correct. I was
Yep.
just about to say that. By the way, we're talking
By
to
putting that label.
we're talking to Erwin Valencia right now at DJ Manotoc. This is the mental health episode of the chat room for those listening on radio. My name is Boom. I was just about to get to that because, there is that supposed to be, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, right? There's supposed to be that separation of just, what really is a mental illness or a depression or anxiety, as opposed to a temporary feeling of, let's say, sadness, loneliness, a breakup, grieving, a loss in the family, maybe you're a friend.
Mhm.
And isn't that also like a dangerous part? Like, how do you know that it is bordering on if not already stepping into the realm of a mental health problem? That's an honest question. How do you, that
Mhm.
I think, DJ E, go ahead and let me know what you think.
From my from what
DJ,
I
go ahead.
keep hearing from the experts, I'm not an expert, but what I keep hearing from the psychologists, psychiatrists, it's usually 10 to 14 days of, you know,
Hmm.
on and off episodes of depression that usually they can't really pinpoint the trigger. Then they can start to consider that it could be clinical depression. Okay, and that's what you call clinical depression. And when I felt that, it was really the way I would try to describe it. It was like you just felt like an empty vessel for no good reason. But why the hell am I so sad? I can't recall in the last few days that could have triggered it. I didn't have a fight with anybody. Nobody scolded me. I didn't lose anything. Nothing. It's just like, what is this emptiness? And it was so different from feeling sad when I would fight with somebody, or I would get
Mm.
scolded by my mom, or get grounded for life for the third time, or whatever. It's just so different. The emptiness is so alien. That's like, this is different, man. So it just, I mean, because throughout your years growing up, you'll know that you feel sad for something,
Right.
like a fight or whatever, a traumatic thing. But it was like, when I felt the first bout of clinical depression, like, whoa, this is like, ugh. It's like you want to just pull it out of the gut, but it wasn't that easy. So, I don't know, chime in on that, how the
Yeah,
experts define it.
I mean, like just like when things become chronic from the physical perspective, it takes about an average about 3 weeks for something like a back pain to be a
Mhm.
chronic.
Oh,
Chronic.
okay.
So, once you hit a certain level where, usually a little bit of movement, usually, a little bit of medication, a little bit, and there's many studies to kind of show what the benefits are of different modalities, so to speak, in order to help physical health issues. As if you've passed a certain amount of time, and even for me, I'm not a psychologist nor am I a psychiatrist, but as somebody who coaches for well-being, if
Right.
it's something that I can't handle, but just by lifting your spirits up or reframing you or trying to help you just like go through like your mindset and how to like flip it, so to speak. If it's something that it's deeply rooted in a situation that I personally can't handle, then I say, look, I think it'd be best that you probably seek some help that's beyond what I can offer you. And usually you'll give it about 2 to 3 weeks. You'll do usually if it's that situation, it's like if it's a 3 week and it's still like getting you, you're like, okay, you know what? I I'm honored that you allowed me to be a mirror for you, but just by simply being a mirror for you, and you can't get to this chance because there's other things beyond this that are beyond what my capabilities.
Right.
I think we need to like seek more professional help.
So this is interesting, and I'm sure I'm not the only one hearing this for the very first time. There might be some other people who are hearing this for the first time, that there's actually some sort of a number that is put on the length of time on the average, especially if there's no trigger, which is what DJ was talking about, because there's, of course you can grieve for 14 days or 3 weeks or whatever.
Mhm.
If let's say somebody obviously passed in the family or a good friend or whatever, but it's the point that TJ was trying to make, correct me if I'm wrong, TJ, is that whole no trigger thing, and you're still
Yeah.
feeling empty and lifeless for like 14 days, 3 weeks onwards. Now, you guys are
Yep.
around the NBA a lot, around athletes a lot. DJ, you've covered the NBA for a very long time. You continue to do so. E, you work with the organization for a while now. Um, Give us a general feel of how it is in that world. Is it an accepted conversation already? Is there an ongoing conversation already? Is the stigma still there? Is there a sense of shame? Because again, athletes are considered to be, physically healthy and on top of their game, and obviously idolized by so many people. And maybe some of them don't want to speak about it because there is a sense of shame that is
Mhm.
associated with it. But Kevin Love came out and has become an advocate. Has there been like a surge in the people not only necessarily coming out, but also talking about it and helping
Mhm.
or being
Yeah.
advocates of it?
Yeah, from
Well,
my
go ahead,
standpoint,
Erwin.
it's been interesting because as somebody who's been in pro sports now for 15 years, I was in baseball for 8 years prior to being in basketball,
Hmm.
and the issues you'd have in the baseball world is usually from a performance attention situation, and then also looking at the backgrounds of some of the people that come from poverty in Latin America and all that other stuff, and there's a lot of challenges that they have to face in order to get a shot, not only to make it
Hmm.
to the minors to be able to like compete, but the next level and the lights and the cultural situations and not speaking English and all of these are factors that create anxiety that allow So it was something that I think at that point when it's at ground level, you're having more people that act as really more like mentors or guiding people or like we would get not necessarily like consultants like but people who were like community people, like would be like moms or dads to some of these younger kids that are just like trying to adjust to what life is in a different part of the world. And so in that sense, from the ground level is different. I think because the NBA doesn't have a minor league and doesn't have this development process
Mhm.
as much as baseball and even soccer in Europe does, there's no like home mom, there's no like team mom or whatever that
Hmm.
they don't get. So I think when you reach the level like they do in the NBA, a lot of the guys are like you said, try to be like tougher, particularly because they're carrying the weight of not just themselves, but their people back home, their parents, their moms, their boys, their
The
communities and stuff,
neighborhood. Yeah, yeah, right, right,
neighborhood that they feel like they have to rise above that.
right.
And those who have been guided and those who have had the benefit of having a good kind of upbringing, like being part of like maybe having an opportunity to go to like a prep school when they were younger and then having more people around them and then going to a great university that allows this 360 type situation, going to great programs in Division 1, or for those that end up going to like Europe. I mean, speaking from experience, I was very lucky to have the opportunity to work with Christos Porzingis, and Christos was living in Spain as a kid from Latvia that didn't speak Spanish, but they had like a team mom that kind
Mm.
of helped him kind of grow up in that situation. Not
Mm.
everyone has that benefit.
Right.
And so I think now, because of the bigger awareness of things and because there are key players that have come out, I think the awareness of it is existent and the conversations have started to the point that each league now, from baseball to basketball to football to soccer, all have like these directors of mental health now per league.
Right.
And it's
Right.
constant going down the lines where each team has either a mental performance coach or has a psychiatrist as a consultant or a psychologist as a consultant. Some have sports psychologists. So, but to kind of once again keep you at the barrier of where you're not dipping down to those negatives, so to speak, but
Right.
rather keep you in the balance above and keeping you on the black. So to speak.
Right. Right. TJ, what have you observed in covering the league or sports in general? And I hope your right hand is still
You know,
okay.
it,
You're holding the phone.
I know, is your arm
it's
okay,
on my
dude?
knee.
Like,
So, it's on my knee.
Oh,
I'll get therapy tomorrow.
is that your stand? Your stand?
Dude, I work out now,
no.
buddy.
There you go. There you
Keep my
go.
arm out for a
There
moment.
you go. There you go. Okay, what have you observed?
Anyway,
Yeah, in terms of your coverage, as now, as E has mentioned, that conversations are ongoing and key personalities,
yeah.
key athletes, or maybe even key leaders, executives have
Mhm.
come out and spoken about it.
You know, that 2018 was something else, bud, because that was the year I came out with my video. If I'm not mistaken, January 27, 2018.
And by the way, just before you
I
continue,
kid you not.
the video,
Yeah.
for those who want to refer to the YouTube video that you're
Mhm.
talking about, can you tell them just in case they haven't seen it yet?
Yes, sure. Just go to YouTube and type "You Will Be All Right" and then my name, TJ Manotoc. You'll see it there. Same with Facebook. Type "You Will Be All Right" and then TJ Manotoc. You'll find it there as well.
Okay. Fair.
So when I brought that out 2018, late January, I kid you not, the domino. I internally I saw dominoes fall because of course I have nothing to do with it, but who knows? What
Yeah.
right? Kevin Love came out like a few weeks after that with his.
Interesting. Yeah.
I want to find the best adjective, but I can't. But it was just a fascinating, gut wrenching, goosebump, tindig balahibo essay.
Essay, article, right? You're right.
Players Tribune, yeah.
Right.
The Players Tribune, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And he could have just, said, "I'm going through something, blah blah blah." Other players have done that. I don't want to belittle them. I don't want to name names as well, but I want to honor Kevin Love for the way he did it, because he went in extreme detail.
He did
with exactly what he went through in those games in Atlanta and how he literally fell to the floor in the locker room. He thought
halftime,
his
right?
Chest,
Right.
and he didn't know it was an anxiety attack. And then through the therapy, through the months about his grandmother passing away,
Right.
he did the world a great service of going into such detail. It's one thing to say, "I'm a superstar athlete. I'm going through this. A lot of us are going through this. It's great that a man is now talking about this," and he would still do a good job about it. But honestly, I think if you dig into the context and the quality of what he said, how he said it, added more gravitas, gave Kevin Love an even more inspirational and influential platform, as opposed to the others who have come out and yet lacked the story behind it. So
Or maybe
I
not only the story, TJ, but maybe also the communication skills to express it.
Yeah, that
Right.
too.
To communicate
Absolutely,
it.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, not to knock on anybody else,
No,
but
not
it's
at
just
all. Not at all.
yeah, to honor Kevin talaga the way he did it and the way he followed up with it.
Mhm.
A lot of others have come out of it and that was just it, and they're just supporting others and they're advocates. But Kevin took it to the next level. He has a whole foundation. He encourages people to write letters to him, and he and the staff would read them, and they would choose those he would reply to, and the whole works, right? So amazing what he's done. Michael Phelps as well came out
Right.
shortly
Right.
after that,
Right. You're right.
and you're like, Michael Phelps, you're like the best athlete in the world. You wanted to kill yourself? Why? Diba? I mean, after all those gold medals, and then, but that's the thing, and he would, I'd like to get Ian this topic in terms of the elite athletes who succeed. They suddenly feel the emptiness, and I kid you not, I met the Brazilian Michael Phelps. His name is Fernando something. I actually met him at a conference of Dr. Shefali last year in LA called Evolve.
Okay.
Yeah, he was there. He spoke out several times. You know how people in the audience will share whatever. And after his third sharing, he said, "I used to be an Olympic bronze medalist. I was the best swimmer. He said I was the gold medalist for the world championships in so-and-so year." And I'm like, who's this dude? And anyway, I went up to him during a break and I found out that he's like the Michael Phelps of Brazil. And he, as well, almost took his life. And it's fascinating to see that there are athletes who reach their prime, reach their goals, and then they're like, what now? Because for all their life, sorry, there was an alarm. I just killed okay. That's my 10 p.m. regular Sunday reminders. But anyway, so for all their life, they have a rhythm. They have a goal. They have a routine. I train hard.
Right.
My goal is to win gold medal. And then they get it. And they're like, that's it? Why am I not happy? And they realize, not all, but some realize that their happiness is not necessarily, in tandem with success.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's one thing that some of them had gone through, and I actually interviewed Fernando. I met up with him when he was in San Francisco. We had a fascinating conversation. Wild story. I'm just so devastated that the memory card of that interview was destroyed. But I'll reach out to him again and I'll talk to him again. He's an awesome guy. In fact, he said he was guested in a mental wellness forum on athletes, and he and Michael Phelps was there.
Wow.
And they both talked the same thing. And sabi nga niya, when Michael Phelps spoke, in English, and he was next. After that, he told the organizer, "You sure you want me to talk? Because it's the same thing."
Yeah.
It's like the same thing, but in the Brazilian context. But anyway, but so I mean, rounding back to Kevin Love and all that, I'm so happy that they're talking and doing something. It's one thing to talk; it's another thing to do, right? And they're taking action. The NBA as well, they took action
As
after
a
that.
league, right?
Adam Silver instituted, or is it? Wait, it might be NBA or the NBA Players Association. I confuse which one actually did it, but I know both are. They have a wellness. They have a wellness division that's run by Keon Dooling. Okay,
Former player.
Right. Keon Dooling, exactly. And he's some kind of a life coach and wellness advocate. So he's the head of that now. And I was so happy to hear that news that there's an NBA player a legend who's doing something about it. And actually, you know, at a league level, aside from what Erwin said, there are teams who do that they have sports psychologists, all that. And I'm happy to do that. On a personal note, I took a chance to contribute somehow. I interviewed Adam Silver last year, bud. Remember in our final coverage? He was one of my guests for pregame.
Right.
And I wanted to take the opportunity to thank him for doing what they're doing for mental wellness. This is off camera after the interview because we have 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
On the pregame. It's very strict.
Right.
And they're very strict about the questions you can ask.
Right.
It was about the league and the finals, what that.
Right.
But I asked permission to our friends in the NBA if I could give him a gift. And it was a book. I gave him the book of Johan Hari. I don't know, Erwin, if you've heard of Johan Hari's book, The Lost Connections. And Johan Hari is a British journalist who, like me, well, we're both journalists who had depression, but him was longer, and he was like from his mid-20s to his late 40s. And he just was in a downward spiral of depression through many, many years. And he was one of millions, or like him, who doctors just say, "Oh, you have depression, here, take this pill." No counseling whatsoever. For him, he was a daming ganon. And yet,
for sure,
like, feel well for a while, and feel better, and then they'll make it stronger, and then make it stronger. And then he's like, "Is this it? Why isn't it working?" So he went on a journey of investigative journalism all around the world, and the ending was he found 7 causes. What he says, and then the jury's out there for you to believe him or not, and the research that he dug up, 7 causes of depression and the solutions. The gist of it, not to spoil the book, it's an amazing book. I listened to it on an audiobook on a drive to Lake Tahoe a couple of times. Guys, I lost count how many times my jaw dropped. When you hear something amazing and like what the hell? I'm like, oh my God. Some of the research dug up about the conspiracies within the big pharma, how they would hide some of the truth about the efficacy of the drugs and this and that. I don't want to knock on that. I do respect that there are some drugs out there that work. I do respect there are psychiatrists who need to give drugs to those who are, like Erwin said, in the negative tens. They're suicidal. They're going to harm themselves. You can't even talk to them.
And there are chemical imbalances. There
are legit chemical imbalances, but the research showed that there's a very small percentage of them. Parang less than 10%. So ang point niya, bakit yung pati yung 90% binibigyan nyo ng gamot?
Okay,
Kung
I get
hindi
it.
naman yun yung kailangan. So that's the argument he's trying to bring to fore to be discussed.
What's the book again? Sorry?
Lost Connections. Lost Connections.
Okay.
Lost Connections.
And I handed it to Adam Silver. And I said, Commissioner, I applaud you that you're doing in mental health. I just want to give you this book. This book I've been a mental wellness advocate, and I said this book has been an eye-opener, and it's one of the best books I've ever read on mental wellness. And he said, oh my God, I've been meaning to get this book.
Oh, okay.
So many people have told me about this book. Thank you so much. And I remember I took photos of it. I have videos of the moment I gave it to him, and he was like, so I'm like, hey, cool. If I could contribute somehow to share information, because that's what I am. I mean, as journalists, but we're not the story, right? We just talk about what we see, whether it's sports, it's, whatever event.
Yeah.
We share the story, right? We're just passing it on along the way.
We try to facilitate.
Yes, yeah. So that's it. So, and it's an incredible book. Johan Hari has been a guest on Name the Podcast. He's been there. Joe Rogan has been there twice.
Yes,
I've been guested by Dave Shetty. And dami rin yung and the
I've
funny
heard
thing about him is,
I've heard and watched the Joe Rogan episodes of him
with
there.
Johan Hari.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, he's so madaldal. I mean, madaldal might be an understatement because when he gets going,
Yeah.
If I'm a host, I would struggle interviewing him. Like, hang on, let me ask you a question because you're just going on and on.
You're like, hold on
He's
one
like reading a book,
second.
but he's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
or he's a gift to a host. Honestly, when you have somebody
Absolutely.
like
Yeah,
that. Wait,
that too.
let me go back.
So
Let me
for
just
those watching, check it out.
yeah, go ahead. Okay, I just wanted to squeeze in, going back to the Kevin Love part, and I want E to chime in on this one. He was the one who also said that, success is not immune to depression. He said that during an interview, I think with
Yeah.
Jackie McCollum, I think for ESPN. The other point that I wanted to make it, and here it's more recent because we touched on the Paul George thing where he struggled in that series, where he was maligned. Obviously the social media ganged up on him for because he wasn't playing well, and then he finally came out eventually talking about his struggles in the bubble and how it probably contributed to the poor play. Now you think about it this way. Imagine if the game that you love, regardless of whether it's basketball, baseball, or whatever, is the one sanctuary that you have, and it's the one place that gets you out of, let's say, whatever anxiety you're experiencing or exposed to or suffering from, and then that's not working. Imagine if the game's not flowing for you, and then there's social media, in this day and age. I mean, how do you deal with that? The one thing that you consider your sanctuary is failing you because the game you're not playing well. So, I mean, as somebody who's been around athletes and somebody who's been around players who've seen the peak of success and also the darkest parts of being an athlete, how do you process something like that, E?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that I obviously don't know Paul George and that.
No.
Really
It's just an example of
I
what.
can't tell
Yeah.
his personal experience.
Right.
But the one common denominator from what I've found from any high performing individual, even let's say, and I what comes to my mind as you guys were talking about this is there's a show on Netflix called White Lines, and it's about Ibiza back in early 2000s, and this kid from England that goes to Ibiza, and he says he wants to be the Messiah, the next big DJ of Ibiza, the king of Ibiza. And and the story goes around, like, it starts with his body being discovered, and whether it was a murder or whether it was a suicide or whatever it was. But as the story is going, the interesting, I guess, phrases that came out to me there was like, so the sister who was trying to find out what went wrong with her older brother was like, what happened to him? And so one of his best friends who was there in Ibiza with him, and 20 years later said, well, just think about this, your brother was the king of the castle at the age of 21, and he's had everything, women, money, everything else. And then the question is, what's next? And that steep drop that occurs from the heightenedness to like down there is a very steep drop. And TJ, you know what that means. And so people who have used that, let's say for him, it was the music, for him, it's being a DJ, the crowd, it was like that. But now that's taken off from you. Perfect example, COVID's going on. There's no events. All these musicians, all these artists, all these performers, Broadway, people in Hamilton finally made it to Hamilton, and now they can't perform. It's like, right, you've taken away from them. So what then do they like look back into? What then do you find themselves in order for them to continue to go on? And so for me, as I have these conversations with people, the first thing I ask them is like, let's take a moment real quick to take the breath and pause and think about right now at this single moment in time. Take away everything that you felt as a sanctuary and as you felt as like is the one thing that made you who you are. And then ask yourself at this exact moment in time, what are the things in your life that you're grateful for? And let them think about it. Let them pause. Because a lot of times they'll say, well, basketball was everything I had, or Broadway was everything I had. Being a
music was everything.
Crowd was everything I had. It's like, Yeah, but in the end, you had that for what reason exactly? It's like, oh, because that brought me happiness. Okay, cool. But then what essentially, why did it make you happy? What was it? Was it the crowd? Was it the money? What? And as you slowly filter down all these reasons, you start finding out things like purpose. You start finding out things like passion. And then you being grateful for those things then allows you to like look at things in a different perspective. And I think that's wherein lies that guide. It's like it's having conversations like this, and it doesn't have to be clinical from the get-go. It's just literally just
Right.
checking with yourself. And that's some of the biggest suggestions I give people. It's like, check in with yourself. As you first wake up in the morning, aren't you happy you're actually breathing? Aren't you happy that you're just like that you have a comfortable bed, that you have an opportunity to stay in a nice hotel? You know, that in itself, when 3/4 of the people around the planet don't have what you have. I know this is your sanctuary, but guess what? You have it good.
Yeah.
Just think about that. And I think if you bring reality and awareness to what people feel and how they look at things, it allows them to slowly kind of go back in the onion peels and say, okay, yeah, actually, you know what? Why do I love basketball? Why this one sanctuary? What was it about this? And you say, maybe for some people, it's the camaraderie. It's having support system. It's having people, your team around you. Then harness that. Be grateful for the fact that you're there and you got a team around you that supports you, that gives you love, that your family is there. And that if support system is what it is, support system is what it is. And so from, and this is me coming from a positive psychology situation, because ultimately what we want isn't necessarily happiness. From the research that's been shown, it's a sense of well-being. It's being able to thrive or flourish. This is what we all want, because flourishing is defined by 5 different things. And if you will allow me, I'll explain that a little bit. Is they're made of an acronym called PERMA. One is positive emotions, which happiness belongs to. And happiness, as you've explained, is a fleeting situation. You could be happy one day, you could be sad the other day. But positive people are those that take that negativity, understand what it is, say thank you and reflect for what it is, and then move forward. And that's the difference between positive and negative people. It's not because they're negative all the time or that they're positive all the time. Positive people feel bad too. But guess what? They jump and move forward. And that's the difference. Number 2, engagement or flow. Your ability to say, hey, you know what? I'm in the zone. And I'm working. I can't believe it. Out of nowhere, suddenly like I'm doing the best work I'm writing my book. I didn't even think about writing my book. Next, my book, I've written 40,000 letters, I have 40,000 words. It just happened. 3, relationships, support system, people that back you up and all those that surround you. 4, meaning in life, purpose, why you exist in this world, the awareness of what that is. And lastly, achievements, performance, winning something. So in the end, the reason why my world has changed and I've moved from this world of true high performance and sports science and data analytics and all that stuff, and the true hippie in me came out, was because I realized that it wasn't performance that I want to share to the world. It was like a sense of being well, because in the end, performing high, what does it get you? It makes you happy. And when it makes you happy, you're able to live well. So in the end, it's this mindset of shifting. It's like, what do you want? You want to thrive. You want to be able to be out there and be pain-free and just to be able to enjoy time with your kids and just flourish, and that you're living in a world of abundance, and that anything you do, you manifest, because guess what? You think about it and it happens, because your mindset and your feeling and your emotions are living in one space. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect tense. It means that they're all gauges, like you're driving a car, and it's like one thing, maybe the gas is a little bit low, but in one side it's high. So it balances itself out. As with everything, there's yin and the yang. But as long as you find that middle ground, that is the way for you to thrive or to flourish. And so by then looking at that and peeling those layers and saying something that's like, okay, I know this was your sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
But what else keeps you awake at night? What else wakes you up in the morning and says, you know what? I'm alive today because I have this.
Okay.
And then if you put things in perspective.
Yeah, perspective always very
I'll add to that,
important.
Bud.
Can I just really quick before you add?
Go ahead.
We're talking to Erwin Valencia, all the way from New York. He works for the New York Knicks as a team physical therapist and wellness lead, and a positivity expert, as we want to call him. Also, my buddy TJ Manotoc, the North American News Bureau chief, is with us from San Francisco. You're watching us live on Facebook and, of course, on Twitch, on Kumu, and listening through Spotify and, of course, through Magic 89.9. Yes, TJ, you wanted that.
So, totally agree with everything Erwin said, and I'll bring in a few anecdotes, Bud, of what you and I heard through the years of us covering, and you may remember this, and they impacted me massively. First is when LeBron James, I think, spoke after one of their finals losses.
I think you're talking about the first one, the 2011
I'm
one
not
against
sure,
Dallas.
actually.
I might remember this.
Could be, yeah.
When he talked to a
but I'll
sports
tell you the quote.
psychologist.
Yeah. No. I'll tell you this quote.
Okay.
I remember, I think it might have even been during the finals when he was down. And I think the reporter asked about pressure and how you handle pressure. And he said, you know what? I go out on the court and I give it my all. I prepare as hard as I can. And there are 9 other guys with me on the court. And I can't control everything that happens. But I give it my all, get out on the floor. And if we win, great. If we don't, I can live with the results. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but I'm pretty sure I remember the exact ending. I can live with the results. So for him, living with pressure, anxiety, whatever happiness, it's not connected to the result of his sport of choice. He enjoys it. He enjoys the challenge. He enjoys the camaraderie, as Erwin said, the challenge of trying to perfect it and doing all that. But again, at the end of the day, you don't have full control over it. It's not 1-on-1. Now, if you're Efren Batarreas and you're playing pool, fine, 1-on-1. But still, again, you're still against another opponent. You don't have full control of the results. So why put that unnecessary pressure on you? But that, for me, validated my feelings way back to the time that I was getting out of depression. Because that's what I told myself in college. I'm like, I refuse to allow things that I have zero control over or little control over to stress me out. Because for one, it doesn't make any sense. And the one of the things that mattered to me most at the time was grades. I'm like, okay, I will go to school to learn, engage, listen to my teachers, engage in the conversations. But I'm not here to pressure myself to put a certain number on a piece of paper that I know will not define me for the rest of my life anyways. Yeah, it may give me a head start to getting into a job here and there, but it's not my life. It's not who I am forever, right? So for me, my child walked in my shadow. For me,
You're in the shot.
It's not, I know, all of a sudden, it's the only life you have, buddy. Anyway, for me, it's a moment that really validated my mindset that I've had for 20 years, but and it's like, wow. And this is an elite athlete who's saying this. Second, when I interviewed Eric Spoelstra during the height of the Heatles, right? And we were asking him, how do you manage handling these superstars with all these egos, right? And he said the word that to this day really I carry with me. He said, we're able to compartmentalize our lives. And for me, I visualize that like a vitamin container that, you know, the lolas and the titas bring around to separate their vitamins for the day and the AM, the PM, all that. A literal visualization of how you compartmentalize your life. He's like, here in the basketball court, we're a team. We're the Miami Heat. When they go out, there's something else. They're a father, they're a brother, they're a cousin, or whatever. And then tomorrow they're an endorser of Nike or Adidas or whatever. So there are different compartments, and he makes sure that they're not allowed to infiltrate one another. Yet the lines are blurred. But if you're able to really delineate and say, this is that, this is this, and here I'm focused on this, and it's not going to affect me in this. If people like athletes like Paul George had that gift of that perspective, and similar to the experience of LeBron and having that perspective, it would help them a lot. I mean, I don't know if it will take away all their anxieties, they'll still be there, but honestly, I think it will help them a lot. On a personal note, for me, on a personal note,
right,
that he mentioned gratitude. For one, just for those of you out there who may not heard, kindly Google it because it is now scientifically proven that daily practice of gratitude has been proven to make you happier and more productive. I'll leave it there. The research is abundant. Okay, in
I'm
terms of
sure. Yeah. Right.
CEOs, people
Right.
who work, and it's basically having a gratitude journal and writing down 3 things you're grateful for every morning. Starting Easter, I went on a journey of an enhanced wellness. I'd like to consider myself a relatively healthy, human being, but my
Teach. Sorry. Teach. Hang on. Teach. Teach. Wait. I think I lost your audio. We lost your audio for a second. Can you hear us? Yeah, I lost your audio for a quick second there. Yeah. E, are you still with us? Yeah, you
Yeah,
are.
I'm right here,
Yeah.
man.
Okay, I can
What
hear.
makes it TJ's good?
Yeah, I can hear, but I don't think we can hear TJ. Oh, maybe.
It
Yeah.
literally just like shifted. It like shifted in a
There you
second.
go. Wait. I think you're back. Hello,
Where
Teach?
did you hear me last?
You were saying something about gratitude.
Hang on. I can hear you. Oh, pulling
Right.
down the.
We're talking to TJ Manotoc and Erwin Valencia. This is
Sorry,
our
guys.
mental health episode here on the chat room. My name is Boom. And TJ, yes, you were saying. Go ahead.
So what was the last thing you heard me say?
Yeah, I think it was just about gratitude. About, go ahead and do the research. You Google it.
Gratitude, yeah. And then on a personal note, on Easter this year, I started with that. I wanted to do something different, and I was, with all this quarantine and the pandemic and all that, and the worries of becoming a quarantine dad bod, I wanted to check in with my health and be healthier. I went back to my old Baron method nutrition plan, which helped me lose weight years ago. But you saw that,
Yeah, I
right?
remember, right?
With the juicing and the brown rice and all that.
Right.
And I did it. I mean, on a physical note, up to this day, I've lost 23 pounds since Easter. I've been meditating every day since then. I've been doing a daily gratitude practice. I bought the gratitude journal notebook each day since then. The meditation, Erwin, was because of Jay Shetty, because he started the daily live free meditation, and I got hooked on it thanks to him. Okay, so I owe him a lot of debt of gratitude for that. And since then, I was so grounded. And I was so prepared for what was to come, bud. And what was to come was the stresses of ABS-CBN and us losing the franchise.
Right.
To this day, I don't know tomorrow if I have a job. I really don't.
Right.
I'm one of the few who are still left. But tomorrow I could get a call from Manila and say, I'm sorry.
Done. Yeah.
Okay.
Done.
But I'm even keel right now. And I would really credit it a lot to the meditation and the mindset that I've been practicing the last 4 months that has strengthened me. It's like I'm a UFC or a boxer UFC fighter or a boxer.
You gotta train your mind. You gotta train your mind.
And I'm in it. Exactly. My mind, my soul, my everything. That I didn't intentionally do this, but I'm prepared. And people ask me, my wife asked me, my sister asked me, why aren't you panicking? You could lose your career. I'm like, so it's a job. At the end of the day, for me, there's such a thing as fear setting. And I learned this from Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is an amazing personal development guru. He wrote the 4-Hour Body book, the 4-Hour Work Week, and he has an amazing, amazing podcast. One of his popular TED Talks is called Fear Casting, wherein it's not goal casting, not goal setting, but you set your fears and you break it down. What are you afraid of and why? And for me, at the end of the day, if it's not going to kill you, really, what are you afraid of? Because for some people, they're afraid of, oh my God, if I lose my job, I would have to sell my house. I have to sell my car. I'll have to do this. My kids won't go to private school anymore. And honestly, I looked at it and I'm like, if that happens to me, so be it. If I have to go back to the Philippines and live in the province, live in a farm, at least I'm alive. And that's exactly what Erwin is saying. I wake up with gratitude that I write in my notebook. And I get redundant. I know you got to be variating the entries once in a while, but I'm always there saying thank you for my family. Thank you for my health. And as long as I have that, that's the minimum. For me, that's the minimum.
Right.
And everything else is gravy. I have a career and all this and that. And for me, that's gravy. But for me, with the family around me and the health that I have, that's the most important thing. So when I have that and I have full control of those things, I'm good.
All right. I want to say this, that okay lang na redundant yung entries mo sa journal mo. That's better than, if you start plotting in negative stuff. Yeah, it's not redundant, but it's not good. So I think
Yeah.
redundant in this case is very good.
Yep.
I have a few minutes left with you guys. I just want to say something. Well, first of all, if you did go through a panic phase in this pandemic for whatever reason, I've talked to a lot of the celebrities here on this show also. And they're also saying, hey, come on, if you did panic, it's okay. It's also okay. Because remember, when we talk about this pandemic, you, DJ, Erwin, we have no frame of reference with this. We have no
Mhm.
experience with this. So for us to panic a little, that's also okay at the start. If we can, we have different ways of getting out of it. Obviously, we have different ways of
Yep.
dealing with it. Mine was yoga, and my wife, who is an extremely positive person, just like what Erwin was talking about earlier, that kind of positivity. It's not like she doesn't have bad days, or but
Yep.
she just knows how to put things in perspective, not only for herself but for me. So those two things are big. But also, and I want to get into this before we end, the most basic important thing before we go to all the other stuff, like you know the things that you've mentioned, whether it's audiobooks, podcasts, the stuff that E has mentioned about breaking down these things and understanding perspective and what makes you happy and what makes you thankful. The access to somebody to talk to, the access to someone that you can express yourself to probably would be the first step, the most basic step. If you can find someone, if you have someone that you can express these things to, because I think that's, before you get to all the other steps. Am I wrong to say that that's the first most important thing to, now that let's say you realize that you're going through something and it's a prolonged period, that it may be beyond just a fleeting feeling of loneliness, depression, or whatever. It's actually something more than that. It's something that would take maybe an expert or maybe medication or whatever it is. But isn't the most important basic part having someone to actually be open to, and that someone not being judgmental to you? Am I simplifying it too much, or is that a correct thing to say?
No,
What do you think? Yeah.
yeah. So once again, from my perspective, um, in a recent study that was done by Harvard, that they just followed more than 400 people for 75 years. The single longest longitudinal study done on, in a sense, on longevity and happiness, showed that out of every possible factor that made people not only happy in a span of 75 years, but also allowed them to live longer, above anything else, people would say like, oh, maybe they drank wine every day, or maybe they had a good job, or they worked out every day. And surprisingly, as everyone expected all these physical attributes to be the reason why they're, what made them happy for 75 years, which then in turn made them live longer, it wasn't any of that. The number one factor was your strength of your social connections. It was your ability to have somebody there to support you and have a safe space and understand what your role is in life. And I think is that recognition of what you are, who you are, and having a safe space to have this conversation and your ups and downs is the one thing that will allow you to then move forward. In another study that was published in 2018, as they revisited and defined what the happiest people in the world are from a perspective, one of those factors also showed out of 1.5 million people that they studied around the world was the social support system. That was one of the major factors. And what the social support system is, it's being respected. It's having somebody to count on in times of trouble. It's spending time with family and friends. It's having the freedom to choose what you want to do and spend time with people that care for you. It's the ability to have something beyond what money can give you, but rather the feeling in the sense that you're respected and welcome. uh, from a support system that's around you, and that was seen. And so multiple research has been showing more than anything else, rather than all the physical things, the things that we think really is the number one thing that we need, it's having somebody that we can count on in the end, and the research supports it.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. You know that what I was saying wasn't just a simplification of dealing with something like this. TJ, your mom was extremely important to you in those times that you were dealing with something like that, and that's not the case for a lot of people. Sometimes even your family, unfortunately, tends to be dismissive,
Yep.
judgmental, and it's from a lack of understanding of what it really is. Am I correct to say that?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it. There's a lot of that in play. Cultural traditions, beliefs, especially in the Philippines, where the fathers out of the family, machismo comes into
Mm,
play.
mm,
Case in point, I met through my research when I was finalizing the video. I met a young professional in the advertising industry who suffering depression and anxiety, and she tried to take her life, and she survived. But she actually reached out to her parents prior to that and said, I think I'm going through something. This is serious, da, da, da. And they're like saying, maarte ka lang. That's nothing. The depression's not real. It's
yeah,
all
may
in your
mga
head.
naririnig nga ako, TJ, na parang nagsasabi, di ba? Oh, exercise mo lang yan, itakbo mo
Yeah,
lang
yeah.
yan, or, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, madami pa rin ganyan.
Right.
Unfortunately, marami pa rin ganyan. That's why these conversations have to continue going on. And, not to knock on it, but some of them also say, kulang ka lang sa dasal.
Okay.
I,
Yeah.
again, I understand that. I respect that spirituality, religion is a big part of it as well, but it should not be simplified to just that. Okay, so that's just my opinion. But so it only took that family to believe that she was going through something for real when she actually tried to kill herself. Thankfully, she's
Right.
still alive.
Thank God.
But
Yeah.
there are a lot of those who are in that situation wherein I was, blessed that my mom was open to understanding at the time. She didn't know what the hell it was.
Right.
1992, no
Right.
internet.
Right.
Couldn't Google what I was going through at the time. And it's only through just asking around, eventually going to a counselor, a psychiatrist, and then eventually a mentor of mine his name is Max Ricketts. He wrote a book about, beating depression, anxiety in the late 80s. And he's actually the dad of Ronnie Ricketts, the action star, okay? And he became a mentor of mine and taught me about positive affirmations, taught about acceptance. It's the first step, really. He taught me to make an affirmation of acceptance. I accept myself. He made me write it down on paper, say it to the mirror out loud, say it to the mirror in my head. And that became my mental vitamin, that affirmation, until I understood what it really meant. Was that I can't struggle with this like I'm in a straitjacket. I have to accept I'm here. This is where I am right now. This is given to me for whatever reason. I'm hereditarily, inherited this condition.
Because it
My
can
parents
be
split up.
inherited, no?
Yeah. But that's what puts you in a position wherein you are
Predisposed.
predisposed.
All
Put it
right.
that way.
Okay.
Predisposed.
Okay.
Predisposed does not mean automatic you will get it. Same like
Right.
others, like cancer and heart
Correct.
disease. You are
Right.
predisposed, but doesn't mean you have to get it or you will get it. But
Right.
there are triggers, obviously. So my trigger most likely was my parents' separation,
Right.
being thrown into Ateneo, coming out of a Montessori, which was like hell in terms of academic stress. Okay, all that put together. It was a perfect storm for me. But he taught me to accept that there are things I can't control. So accept and then work from where you are. Work from where you are and build on that. There are things I can't change. I can't make my parents get back together, right? A lot of people go through that in their teenage years because of family separations. And that's the first thing you can't fix.
Right.
You can't fix your parents getting back together. So, but going back to your question, talking to somebody is so key. And unfortunately, there's not enough psychiatrists, psychologists around in the Philippines. Thankfully, there are a lot of guidance counselors. But I would encourage more people to get into counseling. At the very least, it's not easy to get into psychiatry and psychology. I know there are people who are into positive psychology, and it's great because it's not something you have to really get a doctorate or a certification, right? Erwin, it's not that long of a process. It's not a college degree. In fact, I met, the first time I heard about positive psychology, I met a Japanese guy who was into positive psychology. He was sitting beside me at an event of Erwin Penne, Florida, Remember Boom, our CM
Yeah.
hero, the guy
Yeah.
who pushed the
Yeah.
carton?
Yeah.
And Efren had an anniversary of his foundation, and this Japanese dude was sitting next to me, and we started talking. What do you do? What do you do? And he's from Japan, and he said he would fly to the Philippines and volunteer for Efren, all this that. But he had a positive psychology initiative in Japan where he deals with hakikomori. Hakikomori is a condition where a lot of young men in Japan pull themselves out of society. Instead of committing suicide, they just lock themselves in their room because they're so ashamed of they're bad in school and they're bad at work. And they just, instead of killing themselves, they lock themselves in the room and they won't talk to anybody.
Isolate.
And that's hakikomori. Isolate, total isolation. And it needed positive psychology to pull them out. He and his team would literally be called in by the family. They would knock on the doors and they'd start talking to them through the doorway. To start just talking to them about their life and how to build on their strengths. And that's what positive psychology is in a gist. They're not going to fix what's wrong with you, but build what's good with you. And understand that there are things you can't fix, but there are things you can improve on. So that's when I was first introduced into it. Like, it's awesome, but we need more people in that. I appeal to you young out there. You're trying to figure out what you want to do in your life. Consider that. Maybe that's your calling. Maybe you can get into this space of wellness and helping people understand themselves, and helping people get better. If you're an entrepreneur, we need more apps like Calm and Headspace. They're great. There are some apps out there who do, instant messaging therapy, which is great too.
Right.
Okay, but we need more of them.
Right.
We need more of those because humans on its own, kulang tayo. If you do the ratio, we're way down. In the Philippines, we're way down the rankings in terms of 1:X amount of population in terms of a therapist. So with the amount of people who are going through things and we need help, we need conversations, we need more people getting into it. So it's going to be a process.
Right.
But the more we talk about it, Bud, I applaud you for bringing this up and making this a topic in mainstream media somehow, and really thank you for bringing this conversation out there that can be discussed. And the more we do,
yeah, I know. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Erwin. But okay, I want to end with Erwin, and I want to end with a quick story also. Since we were talking about social connections, we're also talking about people who are suffering from any kind of form of anxiety, depression, mental illness, and how to go about things, or what were your opening steps, and how you got over it, and who you can reach out to, and how you can reach out. Here's a quick story for me. So TJ came out a couple of years ago in public, right? Now, even before that, obviously, like I said, all of us have, whether it's family members or friends or colleagues that are suffering from some sort of mental illness, right? Regardless of whether we know it or not. They're around us. But we know, I'm sure you, myself, you, TJ, and Erwin, we know people who we're friends with or maybe acquaintances with who are suffering from some sort of mental illness, right? So I've been trying to be aware of all of that already, because in my family also, and friends, talking to a lot of people also. And then TJ comes out with the video a couple of years ago, and from nowhere, right? Because nobody expected it. And obviously, I've been working with the guy for 16 years, and been on, probably 7 years worth of trips to the NBA twice a year with him in different cities in the US. We've gone through, hotel rooms, shared hotel rooms, everything. We've, concerts and eating together. And I didn't know this, right? So you came out with it. So it made me think, knowing that I was trying to educate myself during that time, maybe 3-4 years prior to that, wow, was I at some point, made me think, was I insensitive about certain things? Did I bring up certain things that might have been a trigger for him? Because I didn't understand at that time that you were already a recovered,
there were some who were confused about it. Yeah.
Right. So to me, that was my first thought. It wasn't, wow, he came out, or wow, how courageous of him, of which you are. My first thought was kind of selfish in the sense that, what could I have said something? Could I have done something that was very insensitive? Now, from a general thought, I want to end with this, and I want your thought on it, is how do people who are not suffering from it understand it more, be more considerate, not trivialize it, and maybe not look at it as a stigma? How do we go about it as people who don't, I mean, we suffer some kind of depression, anxiety, and all, but you know what I mean, in the context of this conversation, that we're not, let's say, clinically depressed, we're not diagnosed, or it's not a prolonged thing. How can we be better also around people who are suffering from it?
I think the number one thing that people have to learn in the grand scheme of perspective that actually has probably, I would probably suggest to be instituted. I was once asked if I was the head of an Department of Education, so to speak. And it was like, I think it was in a personal growth conference or seminar I was at. If I was the head of an educational department, what's the one thing I would add as a subject to schools? And my answer was easy. It was empathy. I think too many people around the world don't have empathy. They feel like they, as you said, are selfish, that they just want to feel what they feel. And they think that everyone feels the way they feel. And that's the end of it. But when in fact, the gift that we should be able to have for somebody else, particularly who we feel like we sense that has going through some challenges, is to try to understand how they feel. And to literally just ask the question, hey, how you feeling? And literally just to say that. I think the challenge most often or not are twofold. One, from a perspective of we think that we know how they're feeling. And from our perspective, and we say, hey, yeah, man, so what's up with you, man? Ano, okay lang yan, wala yan, okay lang yan. Kasi, you know, matigas ka naman eh.
Naranasan ko na yan. I felt that.
Yan eh. Okay lang yan. Konting inom lang yan. Okay lang yan. This perspective, there's still no empathy, because even that person's unaware or does not have self-awareness of what that actually means. Or from the other perspective, where you're like on the opposite side and you're just like so afraid to kind of like ask the question. I'm like,
right.
I'm feeling ko medyo hindi siya okay, pero ako jahe ako to ask the question.
Or natatakot ka lang. Oh yeah.
Takot ka eh. So, you know, but the key is, I think, getting better at not only understanding how the person feels and empathizing, but also coming at it very authentically and being good at having a conversation, a real like, hey man, if you want to talk, all good, just no judgments. And I think you have to come up with that. I think too many people have these judgments, have these biases, but like, if you're truly a good friend, and I think so many Filipinos are so gifted listeners, but we're just either A, jahe, or B, we succumb to a cultural norm that we say, okay lang yan, that we don't give the space, actual space. So one of the things that I think we have to do is just understand and be aware of how that person feels, but without having to think that we do know it. But just having simple empathy and saying like, man, kung gusto mo magkwento ng konti, like, yeah, you know, just let me know, without expectations.
Right.
Kasi parang, I think most often it's a culture natin, parang like when we have somebody to say, hey, if you need me, sabihin mo lang sa akin, ha? And then you constantly gonna ask, hey, if you need me, sabihin mo lang sa akin, ha? And then, hey, if you need me, and then the person's like, dude, that's kind of weird. Now I feel kind of like I'm getting threatened that I have to tell you something, instead of just like leaving it. It's like the kulitan doesn't work. It actually it makes things worse for people, especially going through something.
Right.
Let them be, because those who want help will come to those who can help.
Okay.
And support them.
And I think I said this in one of my stories a few months ago. I said that I think the key thing also is sincerity. You have to be sincere when you want to talk, want to help, want to listen, and all that. TJ, I have a couple of minutes. Your perspective is important because you've experienced it, and now you're on the other side of it already. Thank God. With a couple of minutes left, what can you say about people trying to be better around people who are suffering from some sort of mental illness?
Yeah, totally agree with Erwin in terms of the empathetic listening. That's something that a lot of human beings need to learn more. I wish it could be taught in school as well. I wish it could be ingrained in families and cultures throughout the world. I think that's one thing that needs improvement. Let's put it that way. Parenting as a thing, it's in its own. We can't put the onus just on schools and expect the schools to create this wonderful human being for the earth and you'll be a great member of society. It's really up to a big chunk of it is up to the parents, and parents have to evolve and improve. And that's why I honor Dr. Shefali. I can't remember her last name because I can't pronounce it, but you Google her, Dr. Shefali. She's like the parenting expert, favorite of Oprah Winfrey, and she's into consciousness parenting. Okay, and actually we do have one Filipina who's now certified as a Dr. Shefali consciousness parenting coach. Her name is Kit Malvar, and she's actually starting some things right now there in the Philippines. So look her up if you're curious about it. But yeah, for me, but just empathetic listening. That's a big key. Don't judge, don't pressure, just be there and really listen. Don't try to give too much advice and don't be nagmamarunong. But also know the cues as to notice when there's a danger of self-harm. That's the most important. When they start really saying, gusto ayoko na, papakamatay na ako. Because sometimes they say that a lot.
Right.
Especially in social.
Correct,
Sa boyfriend, F my life, I want to kill myself.
Right.
But you don't know when it's for real or not. But you can't play around with that too.
Right.
If it happens too often, you don't want to mess around with it because one day it just might be true. So also have to understand the cues of when it is to maybe warn their parents or warn their teachers. Now, I worry about so and so because maybe the threats of self-harm are real.
Yeah, I saw a friend.
tough.
Yeah, I saw a friend who tweeted that, and I think at around March or maybe early April, and I called that person, and it was real. it was real. He was about to do it. So yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Hey guys, I wish we had more time, but one, it's so late where you are right now. TJ's in a park,
Especially for him.
We're already
it's
awake, man.
past
I'm
midnight.
already awake.
And two, we really do have to end the show also. But I really appreciate your time. Erwin, how can they follow you and what's next for you? Just quickly, just before we let you go.
Yeah, first of all, Dr. Shefali's last name is Chavari. CSA.
There you go, Chavari.
She's part of my part of my Mind Valley community. So
Nice.
Yep.
I know her quite well. So amazing lady, brilliant, more than anything else.
That's where I got this shirt.
Oh, nice.
Really? The fact that my sister-in-law
baliktad,
knows who she is, I was like, and then I had a picture with her, and then like my sister was like, Dr. Shefali? I was like, yeah, she's part of my community. So, anyways, yes, if anyone needs to find me, please go to my website, irwinvalencia.com, or follow me in all my socials at Irwin V Valencia. Literally everything from Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, everything is Irwin V Valencia. I try to streamline everything so that then no one does not find me in any possible way. And what's next? I am actually currently just started last week a mental health awareness campaign in Tagalog using TikTok as my medium, and then putting.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah.
And then I have a team through Buy TV based out of Cebu that's kind of helping me disseminate that as we continue with that. We're doing Tuesday, Thursdays, which is it's called Naranasan Mo Ba? Because I think for me, it's about the experience and not the label of what people go through in order for them to like assimilate with it and then be able to move forward. Because sometimes we're so stuck on labels that people, like I said, find themselves going into the label.
Correct.
Rather
Categorizing,
categorize themselves instead of just going through the experience. And then Fridays, like something fun, like I did a weird dance with meditation and all that other stuff. So that's kind of what's going on with me. And this is going to be the whole month of September. And then eventually as we continue to do it and see how things go, we're going to do some sort of show together. I'm probably looking at trying to get things on Kumu. I did not just found out about Kumu 3 weeks ago, and I was like, what the heck is this? This is like IG Live on steroids. So, too much. But this is a way to kind of get to people. My mission has always been to try to personally and directly impact 1 million Filipinos in 5 years. And so I'm finding every possible way to do that.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, E. DJ, I know your family. We're taking so much time from your family already. So what do you want to say?
Well, no, first of all, thank you. And keep talking. Keep this conversation going. Follow, the right people on Instagram and TikTok to be great influencers. In fact, one of the tips I gave to people before is like, have a second account just for inspiration. Your main account's for you and your friends and what you post. but toggle to a second account where you just follow inspirational people and quotes and whatnot to give you that breath of fresh air, that relief from social media. Like, because it can get toxic.
Para if you can get out of it, because I have this
Yeah.
thing that I'll get out of it for 2-3 days. But if you're the type who you can't get
Yeah.
out of it, at least there's an account that just follows.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish I could.
I get it.
I wish I could like you, but being in the news,
Yeah,
I
know.
can't.
I get it.
This,
I
is-
get
this
it.
is what you guys do. This is both your lives. So
Yeah, I know, exactly. So have another account. Just follow people like Erwin and Jay Shetty and Dr. Shifali, and you know you'll find them there. They're all over the place. But also with the pandemic that we're in now, it's incredible because the borders are and the walls are broken down. You can now attend these events
Correct. Yeah.
virtually. The
We can
Mind
talk.
Valley
Look at
events,
us.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of these personal development events, but are all online now.
Yeah,
The events that
webinars and
Erwin
all that.
talked about. I went to Mind Valley in LA last year. I went to Dr. Shifali in LA again late last year as well. But now they're all online. So look them up. There are people in the Philippines who are starting the movement. They're starting to spread the awareness of Mind Valley and Vishen. How do you pronounce that name? Lakiani is the Malaysian founder of Mind Valley, and they're teaching skills that make people better human beings. Put it that way, plain and simple, right? So look into that. And for me, September I know is Suicide Prevention Month. Let's keep the conversation going.
wow, interesting.
Understand
Perfect.
that people. I thought that's why you did this actually.
No,
didn't know.
I didn't. No.
Good timing.
Even
So,
perfect.
yeah.
Synchronicity, my friend.
So keep the conversation going. Keep talking. That helps bring the stigma down. When we normalize the conversation,
Right.
it takes the stigma away, and you'll be surprised. We can touch many lives, and we can save lives as well.
I guess I was meant to do it for that
You
reason.
are, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate the time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Love to both of your families. You guys take care, and we'll try to do our part to keep the conversation going. And we'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Erwin Valencia, all the way from New York. TJ Manotoc, all the way from San Francisco, are now leaving the chat room. My name is Boom Gonzalez. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week.